Well, it's fight night for former President Trump. He's going to the UFC tilt in Newark, New Jersey this evening as he fights for his political life after a New York jury convicted him 48 hours ago.
And I don't mind being out there because I'm doing something for this country and I'm doing something for our Constitution. It's very important, far beyond me. And this can't be allowed to happen to other presidents. It should never be allowed to happen in the future. But this is far beyond me. This is bigger than Trump. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than my presidency.
Well, Democrats and many in the media got exactly what they wanted out of this guilty verdict.
Donald John Trump.
Don't choke.
Is a convicted felon.
Convicted felon.
Convicted felon.
Why should Americans vote for a convicted felon?
Convicted felon.
He is a convicted felon.
Convicted felon.
I mean, people really have to say to themselves, am I going to vote for a convicted felon?
Confected. But what do voters think?
I don't think that was fair, so I'm going ahead to register to vote. I think it's time to vote and set the record straight.
It just kind of more cemented my opinion about the guy.
Voted for him twice, planning on voting again. Yesterday just cemented that fact for me.
All right, so Kennedy, a lot of us have been arguing that the whole purpose of this trial was to manufacture the convicted felon label for Donald Trump prior to the election. And whether this gets thrown out, as it likely will on appeal later, doesn't really matter. This is a 5-month play for the left, and they have checked that box so far. George Soros' son, of course, the Soros operation backed Alvin Bragg's campaign with money. He put out a tweet saying, oh, yes, the Democrats should be using these words, convicted felon, as often as possible. And, of course, they do all their social justice stuff for the justice-impacted individuals. With one big exception, apparently, Donald Trump. They're kind of giving away the game here, aren't they, openly?
Yes, and that's what happens. There's so much hubris with the progressive left, and all of this has been manufactured. You know, the entire lawfare path to tank Trump's presidential hopes in 2024, that comes from the group of people who is also funding a lot of the anti-Israel, pro-Hamas protest groups on college campuses. It's all kind of the same thing. But yes, they have bankrolled not only Alvin Bragg, but George Gascon in Los Angeles and Mike Schmidt, who is the DA in Portland, and a lot of these ultra-leftist DAs who are ruining once great cities. So, you know, you were talking before the show about how, I believe it was Politico, they deemed Alvin Bragg as a reluctant prosecutor, and it's the only thing he's reluctant to prosecute are rapes,
and real crimes,
and violent felonies.
Look at that.
But you know, here and there are still a lot of people who are still undecided, looking around going, what was the crime? I don't get it, because if you look at the Paula Jones case with Bill Clinton, he did pay her $850,000, and I'm sure there are thousands of other cases of, you know, hopeful presidential mistresses who've been paid off. Are you going to dig up and prosecute every one of those zombie cases?
No, probably not. And this boiled down to, despite all the sort of unseemly sordid details, these were internal miscategorizations of payments that didn't actually cause any financial harm to anyone. There was no victim that they then turned into 34 felonies. It is a wild thing to see.
Campaign, how did they document the payments to the law firm that paid for the Steele dossier? How did Hillary Clinton's campaign, you know, what was the bookkeeping there?
Interesting question. And Anita, on that Politico headline, the reluctant prosecutor, there are a few problems with that when it comes to Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think a lot of people chuckled over that tweet. Alvin Bragg made no secret that he wanted to get Donald Trump. I mean, that's out there. Everybody heard it.
He ran on it.
He ran on it. Everybody knew it. So that headline is, it's interesting. It's kind of troubling, I think.
It's wrong.
It's wrong. And back to your question about what was the crime. I mean, we have a lot of very smart legal scholars on our air. Jonathan Turley is one of them. And I heard him asking over and over again, what is the crime? If he's not sure of what the crime is, then who can be sure of it?
And there are some Trump hostile legal analysts at other networks that we won't mention who also were sort of struggling to come up with a crime, let alone 34 felonies, but guilty across the board, Joe. I've seen a lot of people on the Democratic side, at least some of them, saying, OK, this is really bad for Trump. This is what we wanted. People aren't going to be able to pull the lever for a convicted felon. There are people on the right saying, nope, this is going to solidify Trump's lead and he's going to win now because people are really angry and they're going to, like the guy we played in the clip, I'm going to register and vote because it's so wrong. I'm not confident which way this goes. I think time will tell, obviously, but how are you feeling about it here in the first 48 hours or so?
No feelings, Guy. I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm looking at the fundraising numbers, and I'm seeing $53 million raised by the Trump campaign in 24 hours since the conviction. Think about that for a moment. The Biden campaign didn't raise that amount of money in an entire month, and 30% of those donors to Trump never donated to the Trump campaign in 2016 or 2020. That means he's bringing in people that have never voted before. We've seen this movie before in 2016. He brought in people that felt they were forgotten in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin particularly. That could end up being the difference in this race.
And we'll have a lot more to say about the fundraising numbers here in just a second. That's one interesting metric, no doubt about it. Does that translate into votes? Because people are angry, but 5 months from now, does that translate into votes?
It's an indicator that people are angry, obviously. And I just find it amazing how craptastic it is that Democrats say that they will save this republic from Donald Trump and save democracy by doing the most anti-democratic things you could possibly do, like this trial, like Juan Rashan morphing into Keith Olbermann in a robe, like President Biden running roughshod over Congress and the Supreme Court as far as student loan forgiveness, taking Trump off the ballot in Colorado and Maine. Very anti-democratic, no question.
Speaking of President Biden, he is at the beach this weekend, as usual, spending part of the day biking with his son, Hunter. You may have heard of him.
Oh, dear God.
Who's about to go on trial. Hunter is facing gun charges next week. Biden, the president, mocking this idea that he's, quote, pulling the strings on Trump's prosecutions. Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson is at the White House tonight, unlike the president.
That's right, Guy. When one trial closes, another opens. Hunter Biden faces a trial on Monday on those gun charges where he faces up to 25 years in prison. Now, here at the White House yesterday, President Biden was asked about the historical conviction of his opponent. The president declined to answer with words. Instead, he answered with a grin.
Mr. President, can you tell us, sir, Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir? Do you think the conviction will have an impact on the campaign? We'd love to hear your thoughts, sir.
Our own Peter Doocy caught up with the president outside the Rose Garden where he received a more substantial answer.
Do you think this conviction helps Trump in the election? Are you worried that this could happen to you someday? Somebody comes up with some charges and tries to bring you into court after your term?
Not at all. I didn't do anything wrong. The system still works.
And when Trump says you're just trying to bruise him, what do you say? Politically. He thinks you're pulling the strings behind the scenes, doing all this to help yourself.
I didn't know it was that powerful.
Yesterday, in prepared remarks, President Biden endorsed Israel's plan for a ceasefire in Gaza to end this war with Hamas. Guy?
Lucas, thank you very much. Well, as Joe was just mentioning, donors, large and small, coming out of the woodwork in record numbers for Donald Trump. A whopping $52.8 million donated to the Trump campaign in the first 24 hours alone following that conviction.
In the history of politics, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, somebody will find that I'm wrong, maybe, but I don't think so. They raised with small money donors, meaning like $21, $42, $53, $38, a record $39 million in about a 10-hour period. No, think of that. I like those people.
And now some big business titans also getting behind Trump as well, like venture capitalist Sean McGuire. He's among them, cutting Trump a $300,000 check and switching his vote to red ahead of November. He wrote this on X, quote, "I'm prepared to lose friends. Back in 2016, I had drunk the media Kool-Aid and was scared out of my mind about Trump. As such, I donated to Hillary Clinton's campaign and voted for her. By 2020, I was disillusioned and didn't vote. I didn't like either option. Now, in 2024, I believe this is one of the most important elections of my lifetime, and I'm supporting Trump." So, Anita, it's interesting when you look at the fundraising and just some of the places Donald Trump is going. He was in the South Bronx and drew a big crowd there. He'll be at UFC tonight, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
Now he's also heading out to Silicon Valley, which was not necessarily a terribly friendly area for him, but maybe that's changing in some ways.
Yeah, not so friendly that we know of, but he is headed out to California for a series of fundraisers. He's going to San Francisco, Silicon Valley for a fundraiser hosted by two big tech investors. They host a podcast called All In, and that podcast talks about what the people in Silicon Valley with money really think about things. So that'll be interesting. Then he's off to Beverly Hills and Newport Beach. Look, no one's saying that Donald Trump is going to win California or even has a fighting chance there, but he's going to ring the cash register there for sure.
Kennedy, just a prodigious fundraising number in 24 hours. I expected it to be big. Well over 50 million is a wow.
So in order to raise tens of millions of dollars, Joe Biden needs Barack Obama. He needs George Clooney. He needs Julia Roberts. The former president only needs a conviction. And the exciting thing for him, you know, you and Joe were having this discussion a moment ago, will this momentum carry through until November? Well, the court cases are. So as long as you have other venues that are pressing forward in the legal strain, you will see voters continue to be galvanized and feel like this is an unfair process that has been politically influenced.
Joe, you reacted to that turn and that grin from the president in that video.
It was as creepy and insidious and almost like an F you. Yeah, I'm behind this because I sent my number 3 from my DOJ to go work with Alvin Bragg, which at last check is not a step up in the career ladder. That smile told me so much. And I wrote on Twitter, I said, make that a campaign ad. Literally 1 hour later, the Trump campaign made it a campaign ad. Not because of me, but the picture tells 1,000 words.
Very quickly, I just want to get
He looked like a senile Chucky doll.
That's a better description, actually. Thank you, Kennedy.
Just quickly, let's look at this from Hillary Clinton. She put this up on Instagram. We recently had some new merch made based on a phrase I hear a lot. The design happened to be finalized today. With your purchase, you'll support Onward Together groups defending blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you can see this self-serving merch. She's reveling in this.
This is an 8-year public therapy tour that we are witnessing with Hillary Clinton. The only thing that's missing is Dr. Melfi at this point, for all you Soprano fans out there.
Okay, with that, much more to come here. I want to remind our viewers that Fox and Friends Weekend is interviewing former President Trump. The entire interview with Trump airs tomorrow. That's Fox and Friends Weekend starting at 6 a.m. Eastern.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.